Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's session. My name is Irina, and I'm the event planner for the Redmond Reactor Space. Before we get started, I do have a few things to go over. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and our presenters. We do encourage engagement in the chat. This session is recorded and will be available in 24 to 48 hours on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. Useful links will also be shared in the chat. Which brings us to today's session. This session will run approximately 2 hours with questions throughout, and our speakers today are Jim Bennett and Sam Ronsky, who are both regional cloud advocates. I'll turn it over to them.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and happy Pi Day.
Yes, this is, I think Pi Day is probably the most appropriate time to do this project. And it's kind of starting to finish up everything and get everything kind of sorted out and working. So it's kind of exciting.
Yeah. Yes. Should be a good day. Should be a good day. We hit some problems last week. And today we're going to be fixing those problems and just seeing where we end up with dashboards. I'm very excited. I know nothing about dashboards, Sam, so I'm very excited for you to teach me all the Grafana's.
It's going to be cool. Dashboards are cool. Grafana is really fun. It makes it really easy to monitor all sorts of things, and it looks pretty, and and it's just nice. So yeah, I think we'll be creating a little bit to kind of catch people up and kind of introduce what we're doing here. This is sort of a live session in more ways than one. We're live on Twitch at the twitch.tv/Microsoft developer, but we're also like learning live. So we're learning how to build this solution in real time. We're trying to walk through this project and figure out what do we need, how do we build it, and how does it all come together, and what problems do we run into along the way.
Which is a nice way of saying we have absolutely no idea what we're doing.
Yes. Yeah. We're doing the classic developer thing, which is relying on a search engine mostly to pick out everything you can. We're using mostly Microsoft Docs because it turns out lots of this stuff is out there. And so we're kind of walking through that and pulling some Azure things and pulling some Raspberry Pi things and some open source things together to kind of build this. Do you want to?
This.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole point of this is we want to stop Sam running out of tea. That's the whole point of everything we're doing. Hence why it's called IoT. We want to stop Sam running out of tea. And although there's many simple solutions for how we could do this, we decided to completely over-engineer a utterly ridiculous but essentially supply chain management system to stop Sam running out of tea. So a lot of the principles and ideas that we're playing with are the kind of things we would do on a larger scale. So if you wanted to actually build a full supply chain management system to monitor stock levels and then report on them, reorder automatically, kind of whatever you want to do, a lot of the principles we're looking at apply to that. So we're kind of playing with a T monitor, but essentially a lot of what we do would apply in a larger scale. The larger scale, pun intended, is because the way we're monitoring T is with scales. And this is what I've got here. This is a Raspberry Pi powered smart scale. Now these scales, I'll turn it over. We've got a load sensors on the bottom here. This little white thing here. When that flexes under load, it sends a signal through this horrible mass of wires, very much like spaghetti here, which goes through a thing into a magic box that converts it into a signal the Raspberry Pi can process. And so the idea being we'd have a big jar of tea on here. And every day, Sam takes a scoop of tea out, the level goes down. Then we can monitor that level over time. And then we can respond to that level change. So we monitor it via the Pi. We've got some Azure IoT code running on the Pi. These scales, it's built out of a block of foam, so it doesn't like me moving it around. So hence I've got some weird looking weights here. But I just stop it and restart. It should go back to 0. So got a bit of Python code running on the Raspberry Pi that monitors the weight on the scales. And then we send this up to Azure IoT Hub. Azure IoT Hub is a IoT event event bus, essentially, event broker. So messages go from the device up to IoT Hub, where they can be pulled off by other systems for processing. Now, IoT Hub's an event broker designed for IoT. It's got IoT security. It can manage firmware deployments and all manner of other bits and pieces. And so it goes up to IoT Hub. We have added, if I go to the Azure portal, where are we? We have added stuff to our IoT Hub to put messages into storage. So if I go look at my Azure resource group, we've got some storage in here. And in here, we've got the actual weights coming in. So we've got a bit of storage going on. Just pick a whatever. Yeah, got data coming in here. It's encoded as base 64 encoding. If I decode this, it'll be a weight. So data's coming in. We're storing it in storage. And then we've been sending it to Azure Data Explorer. And Azure Data Explorer is basically a tool for dealing with time series databases. It's you have a cluster of servers, and they manage time series data coming in. And we've got a connection from our IoT Hub going in. Here you go. That's our CPU being used processing data. And we've got various bits of data going in. If you look at the last hour, where's the messages? We've got suggestion results. We've got numbers coming in and all that. And that comes into a database we've got on here. We've got a database called IoT Scales. And this database, if I just run a query against it, if I take the top 10, there we go. There's some data that we've got coming in. Now, this is kind of where my knowledge runs out, and we hand over to Sam's knowledge as we try and take this into some form of dashboard so we can report on it. So, Sam, do you want to talk about the kind of dashboard stuff that we've been playing with? And before you do, defines happy Monday to you. Great to have you on the stream with us.
And happy Pi Day. We're going to be using that one a lot. So it's a good excuse to have Pi and in more ways than one. Raspberry Pis or something delicious. Your choice. So we are using Azure Data Explorer. Jim and I have not used Azure Data Explorer, so we've been learning it live throughout this session. And we also haven't used Custo, which is the language used to query these Azure Data Explorer tables. So this is a Custo query, giving the weights table, and we're just taking the top 10, whatever those 10 are.
Yeah.
Now we're kind of pivoting into cool. We have data, but single data points aren't particularly useful for our use case. What we're kind of interested in is we want a dashboard. We want some way to visualize what we're actually doing. And so we've looked at a few different things and kind of settled on Grafana. So we are running a Grafana instance inside of our Raspberry Pi. So the Raspberry Pi that's monitoring our weights is also monitoring everything and running this dashboard for us. So we can connect to it locally and do all sorts of fun things. And we're using the Azure Data Explorer extension for Grafana to actually pull all of that in. And so this is Grafana. We're kind of learning this as we go. I've used Grafana in the past. I don't think Jim has.
Nope.
So our goal today is to kind of finish out building some dashboards and start actually setting up some alerts and maybe triggering some actions based off of that. And I think it will show a few other things that we might need to kind of play with a little bit to kind of tweak and identify other areas to work on. So it'll be a fun experience to kind of dive into all of this. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to learning this because I know nothing about dashboards. So I've seen them in lots of places. They look very cool. So I'm very excited to.
Grafana is an open source dashboarding tool. So it lets you create dashboards for a whole range of different data sources. We're using Azure Data Explorer as our data source, but this also works for Postgres or any other time series database you might have, like Prometheus or Graphite or MongoDB if you're using NoSQL. You translate whatever the query is into something that has some key value on the x-axis and y-axis, and you have a chart. Or you can throw things into a table or something else, and then you get live dashboards. It can do a lot of other cool things like templating things, so you can template for your entire platform. But we don't need that here. So we're probably not going to play too much with that. We're going to be creating our first dashboard and then looking at how do we ingest data, write a query, and then visualize it. I've never worked with the Azure Data Explorer plugin, so we'll see how that goes. But that's sort of what we're planning to do.
Now, say Grafana's open source, so that means I go to Grafana. So if I just Google Grafana with Bing, if I go to Grafana, so I thought I've got the wrong account as books. And so because it's open source, we can literally download this and run this for free, can't we? We've got a Docker container that we're running, and that doesn't cost us anything.
Right, and we can run it locally. We can run it anywhere we want. There is a way to, if you want a managed Grafana cloud, that is a paid thing that will be managed for you, so you don't have to think too much about this. Or you can just throw it in a container or directly onto your Pi and run it. We're using containers just so we have something that's reproducible. Jim and I are sharing this project, and we are in 2 different states. I'm in San Francisco. Jim is up in Redmond. So it makes it a little bit hard for us to share a Pi between ourselves. So by making something that's reproducible, we can have the same configuration, have the same setup without actually having to do anything. And if we ever screw up our Pi and need to create a new one, or want to create one for another demo, we can just rerun that Docker command and re-get our database. So
yeah, it's the Docker command I was running. I'll just bring up another terminal. I'll show you. Literally, this is the Docker command I'm running. So running it under sudo, doing Docker run, mapping the ports, mapping a folder, installing the Azure Data Explorer plugin, but we're running Grafana/Grafana OSS. So this is the open source free Docker image. By running this downloads that from Docker Hub and just runs it. So as long as we've got this command, Sam can run this command, I can run this command, it will recreate it. The only thing I guess we're not going to recreate is if we've got any configuration, like we build a dashboard. If I build a dashboard, I can't share that with you just by giving you this command line, can I?
right. So there are ways to do that. We can export dashboards, so you can back those up or share them with other people. There's even templates. So if you use Azure Monitor, I think, in Grafana, that's a built-in thing to Grafana, and that already comes with pre-built dashboards for you. So some plugins, depending on what you're using, may already have dashboards created for you. Or if you are on an application team and you're integrating with your platform's Grafana dashboard, that platform team might have a templated version of dashboards that they can just provide to you and say, hey, you want to monitor this Kubernetes namespace, here's a dashboard for that.
So I'll just run this, import dashboard, mount it on my fridge or whatever, done.
Right. The cool thing with namespaces or with templates is you don't even need to do that. You don't even need to create one. You can just say, swap this out and use this as a variable. And then for every different result for namespace in your Kubernetes cluster, maybe you have 10, you'll get 10 different dashboards, and you just select the namespace you want to monitor. And you could even control who can see what. So it's pretty neat. So yeah. Like I said, we probably don't need templates or things like that for this project, because we have one dashboard we're really looking at. We're just trying to grab how much weight is on there, and maybe potentially like how many servings or how many times can you make a glass of tea before you run out. Those seem like sort of the things that we're trying to figure out. So
yeah, and then next week we're going to be talking about packaging up and deploying it and all that. So then you can show me how to do the templatey things or whatever we need to make this more deployable.
Yeah, we've sort of set aside a stream to kind of fix anything that we might not have quite got to where we want it throughout this like live building thing, just in case we didn't allow enough time, because we're learning this, so we don't quite know how long things are going to take. But it also is going to give us some time to kind of figure out how do we release this thing? How do we get it so that you can run your own thing? You can just grab these load cells, slap it on your own thing, and now you have something in your pantry that you can measure tea, or coffee or flour or sugar or whatever you don't want to run out of in your kitchen. So,
though I strongly advise, though, folks who are watching, I strongly advise if you're going to do this, make your wires slightly tidier than mine. Mine are terrible.
Yeah. All these wires also are very thin. They're very high gauge wires. So stripping them and actually either soldering or doing something else can be a little bit difficult. So that might be a little finicky the first time you try it. So
I just found a fingernail was fine for stripping them. Didn't even need any kind of strippers, just fingernail. Done. There we go. Cool. Now, we rounded off with problems last week, didn't we?
We did.
We had some problems.
We didn't. So in order to connect all of this, you need to provide authentication so you can actually connect to your database. You can't just go out to any database and say, I want all the data here. That's typically frowned upon. So we were trying to figure out how do you assign the permissions needed so that we can actually create a user that can read this that Grafana can use. And we ran into some issues.
We did. So we got our table set up with all our data in it. This is the weights, take the top 10. There we go, some weights. And we set up an Azure Active Directory application. So that's kind of how we wrap up the permissions, is via an Azure Active Directory application. We kind of grant those permissions to, according to the docs we're reading. We found this great doc here, visualize data from Azure Data Explorer in Grafana, or Microsoft Docs. Who'd have thought it? Hey, Microsoft make docs for their code. That's great. So we found this great doc and talked about using Azure Active Directory. So we created the Azure Active Directory application. We got our client ID and tenant ID. And then we tried to run this line of code to add permission on the database to this Azure Active Directory ID. And so it's .add database. We give it the database name, IoT scales. We say we want to add viewers to this. So this is a permission. And then we give it the Azure Active Directory application ID and tenant. And we ran this last time and we get this syntax error. This is what we hit. And we rounded off the last stream by basically banging our heads against a brick wall, trying to work out what it meant. And in true fashion of you stop for 5 minutes and go, oh yeah. I had a thought and did a bit of digging. And I came across this fantastic document called Entity Names.
You actually do, I want to cut in quickly, but you do bring up a really interesting debugging tip, which is tea or coffee, whichever you prefer. If you're running into issues, sometimes just sitting at your desk and hammering away at it, it isn't always the most productive way to approach that problem. Sometimes just walking away and going to a coffee shop or something and just walking for 5-10 minutes and then coming back can actually really help you just think a little bit differently and pause. So
yeah, it moves the processing from your conscious mind to your subconscious mind, which allows your subconscious to kind of tick away at it, and that kind of drives your natural intuition, which is your brain pattern matching on the problem afterwards. So there is science and everything behind it. So actually, I guess question for our viewers then: talk about we've all had these situations where we've just hit this problem and we've kind of gone to bed for the night, woke up the next morning and added the missing semicolon, and it's all got better. Do you want to share your stories with us? Let us know what fun times you've had where you've needed to take a step away just to forget, to not think about it, and then you fix these bugs. So please share it in the chat. We want to hear your stories. So my story was I was kind of looking at this thinking, this doesn't make sense. It's this IoT scales doesn't like it. So I went back to the docs, and in the docs it works. So I worked through the docs. And it worked. And that was the weird thing. So watching this, this video here is fantastic, actually. This video really takes you through how to do it. It's a really good video. Well worth watching if you want to get going with Grafana and Azure Data Explorer. And I was working through, we've got all the stuff here. Where is it? It does it. And it talks about this test table. So all the examples got this test database. And then it's looking back at how you set up IoT Hub, which is what we did last time when you ingest data from IoT Hub. And it's got this table name where it calls it, where is it down here? It calls it test table. So I tried this and it was all All fine, and it worked. So why is it mine doesn't work and this works? What is the syntax error? So I was digging around about custom naming. I suddenly thought, oh, it's probably something in the name, because test table works, but what do we call it? IoT scales doesn't work. And so I found this entity names doc. And it talks about entity names, mentions they're case sensitive for resolving purposes. So you have to match the case. And they can have pretty names. And there's naming rules. You're allowed to have underscores, spaces, dots and dashes, all that kind of stuff. But then I saw this, identifier quoting. And that's when, bing, light bulb goes off. Identifiers that are identical to some query language words or have one of the special characters noted above require quoting when they are referenced directly by a query. And the quoting here is square brackets, single quote, quote, square brackets. And that's kind of obvious when you think about it, from if you've done any kind of work with code before, because this, I don't know, I keep scrolling to the end. This is IoT minus scales. Because if I actually hover over it, the name IoT does not refer to any known column, table, variable, or function. And so it's seeing IoT as a thing, and it's seeing scales as a thing. And if you've ever written code like this before, if you've ever had to come up with a variable name with a hyphen in it in C code or Python code, it don't like it. And it don't like it because this is IoT minus scales. This is arithmetic. And it's kind of one of those, of course. So if I just do that, donk, suddenly my viewers goes blue, it recognizes it, and it should. There we go.
Nice.
And it runs, and now it works. So this is where Jim puts his dunce cap on and say, "Oh, I missed it." But it's just one of those things. We spent 2 hours just working through getting this all set up, and just need that break. So yes, that is the fix. Read the docs and make sure your entity names are sensible.
Yeah, an important note is we all make this mistake. I've seen principal engineers much more senior than myself make similar things. You eventually start figuring out patterns in these kind of things and what makes sense and why that's happening. Especially if you're getting started programming, this may not necessarily be clear when you're running through it and seeing something like some error like this. It may not be quite clear why this isn't working, and sometimes it can be a little hard. I do like Jim's method. There we go, words of going back and actually using the example stuff and re-implementing it with the example. That can be really helpful, especially if you're trying to riff on a tutorial. Which I also highly recommend. It helps you kind of break out of that tutorial loop where you're just constantly reusing other things. But reusing that and seeing, does this work? And if so, what's different? Why is mine not working and this one is? And that can help you kind of figure some of these things out.
Yeah, it's literally it's spotting the difference as you go through tutorial. But yeah, just your point about the difference between like the junior engineers and the principal staff level engineers is a lot of it comes down to having seen it before. I think that Scott Hanselman did a thing on that on one form of social media or the other, where he was saying that the more you've seen, the bigger the class of problems you can cut down. So a lot of solving these problems is kind of a binary search. It's, I'm going to cut my problem space in half so that I can look at less things. And so the more you know, the quicker you can pick up things that you can then use to cut the problem space in half. So, with me, it was, this doesn't work. Okay. I know the docs should work because in 99% of the time, the docs work. Obviously, yes, docs can be out of date. So let's go back to docs. Right. Now let's look at what's different. Okay. These things are different. Now let's look at the naming rules because it's different. Is the naming a thing? And kind of just trim off each thing one by one until I got to the answer. So it's just, I've been coding professionally for 23 years. So it's just, what have I seen in the before that allows me to trim this down? And the whole this minus this, yes, when I take off here, it literally tells me in the red squiggly, IoT scales. It doesn't see this as one thing. It's like, yes, if I wrote this in Python code or C code or .NET code, it wouldn't work. It's not a valid variable name. So yeah, it's just the fact that I've seen these things before. And Abdul Sahid says, I'm actually new to Azure, just very curious. Welcome. Azure is epic. Yes, I work for Microsoft, but yes, I do like Azure. It's a really good platform. A lot of great tools. If you had not signed up for Azure, we do offer $200 of free credit to use for the first 30 days. If you're just gonna see if I can grab the. I think this is that. There we go. Let me just.
Nice guess.
We'll get a short. I will get a short link dropped in the chat just to make that even shorter to type. But yeah, if you're new to Azure, you want to have a play, sign up. You do need a credit card to sign up just to verify you're an actual human. We do not charge your credit card. Under no circumstances will your credit card actually be charged. And then we give you $200 of credit to use in the first 30 days and whatever you want. And there's a whole lot of free tiers for a load of services. So have a play. Enjoy it. It's great. It's very, very powerful. And what's nice as well is you can approach it any way you want. We've got UIs, we've got command line tools. There's so many different services there. Get in, have a play, and I will also point you to docs.com/learn. I will drop that one in. That's our direct link to our online learning platform, docs.com/learn. And this is where we have online hands-on self-guided learning with sandbox environments as well. So if you try something, you don't even need to use your Azure account or any of your free credit to learn it. We will spin you up a sandbox for you to play in, and that sandbox lasts for like an hour or so. So you don't even need to sign in if you don't want to. I know some people don't want to be tracked in terms of what they do, so don't even sign in, and you get the sandbox to use. If you do sign in, then we give you badges and all that, so you can see just how well you've done. You kind of keep track of your learning. You build collections of the various learning paths that you want to do, all that kind of stuff. So
there might also be some Azure user groups in your area, so you can check out Meetup or something and find other people, and that will give you a way to meet people who are also using Azure near you, and that can be a good way to learn and find a mentor, because sometimes you'll have these questions and you won't know who or what to ask. There are a bunch of communities on Stack Overflow or there are the Azure subreddit, different places like that. You can go and ask these questions, but sometimes just having somebody to like talk through what you're thinking can be really helpful, especially when you're getting started and trying to understand Azure, because it's a lot. So yeah, it
is a lot. So a friend of mine, Liz Carter, she every time she does a talk about Azure, kind of an introductory talk, she kind of goes through the list of Azure services, and then says, I'm not going to describe what these services, because literally if I went through and described every single one of these services, by the time I got to the end of the list, there'd be 2 new ones on the end. There is so much stuff here.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in Toronto, which we actually have a Microsoft reactor there. So Bruno works in Toronto, so you could check that out. That would be a really good place to go, because that's our team. That's what we do, just in Toronto. So highly recommend it. He's super cool. So there you go.
Just drop a link to his Twitter in the chat. Give him a follow. Yeah, and hopefully there'll be events in person at the reactor in Toronto that you better go to. Obviously, live streams are happening all the time, but hopefully soon have some in-person events as well. Great way to kind of meet new folks, meet mentors, network, get to know everyone. Yeah, no, you are very welcome. And, welcome to the Azure community. It's a great place. So, yes, we found this issue. And one thing Sam and I were talking about with this earlier, because I clued him in on what I was going to do, bit of prep for these streams, is we hit this problem. And we have combined, 30 odd years of experience or whatever it is, and we hit this problem. So if we've hit this, probably everybody else might hit it. It's just one of those possibilities. So what would be the right thing to do here, do you think?
I think we discussed a few things. We do have like quick chats just to make sure we have a general direction of where we want to take these streams. We were kind of talking about how to solve this, and we kind of started with let's fix the docs. So we were initially looking at like, let's just call this out in the docs. So as you're walking through it, it's going to tell you what's going on. And then we realized that might be more than we might want, I think. Because it's not just this. There's a lot of different paths that are going to take you through this experience. And there's a lot of different times when you're going to need to know about the name of your thing, where this is not actually subtraction. This isn't behaving like you think it should. So we changed what we were thinking, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, because docs, we could have fixed the docs. Now, one thing that's great about Microsoft Docs is they're open source. So literally anybody can raise a pull request against the docs. So if we wanted to put a note in here, so for example, I originally thought, oh, I know the best place for this. Under the IT Hub data connection docs, we have, where is it? Is it in this one here? No, it wasn't this one. It was the create a table. Here we go, create table. In create table, there is a tip about table names. So I was thinking I could add the comment here. And the way I would do that is if I go down the bottom, we've got feedback, this product, this page. So I could just go in here to submit. If I literally click this, it's going to want me to do single sign-on. The curse of working for Microsoft is that we have our GitHub accounts authenticated with Microsoft, so we can do stuff, but it does mean every time it wants us to authenticate, I'm using a different Edge profile. So what I can do is if I just copy this link here and go to a different Edge profile where I'm signed in with my Microsoft account. This is one of the fun things we have to do. You see, I've got an issue here. I can raise an issue. So one click, I'm in GitHub and I can raise an issue. Or what I can do is if I go up here, if I just copy the edit link there's an edit link. I'll do this one instead. This takes me to the actual Markdown doc. So I can click edit. I can then make my edits in line in this doc, and that would submit a pull request. So I could raise a pull request with our docs team just by doing this here. And anyone could do that. Absolutely anyone could do it. This is not a magic thing that I can do because I work for Microsoft. This is public. This is completely public, so anyone can make this change. We do have internal repos where we can make changes, which obviously come internally, so that it kind of makes the review process faster. Yeah, if the person who built the application wants to change the docs, then it kind of makes the process faster. But everything is public then. The internal one is fed from the public one. So anyone can do this. Anyone can raise an issue, which is very cool, or they can edit the docs. And we love it when people do that. You just fix a spelling mistake, or you fix a wrong image, or you rewrite something that's written wrong, or whatever, because there's always going to be mistakes. We are human. Our docs team are probably the closest to superhuman that you would get, but they still make mistakes. Things get out of date. It happens. We've got a lot of tools, a lot of docs. So yeah, you can edit one of those. But that we agreed.
You'll also end up on the contributors list. So if you make changes to this, you'll see there's N contributors to each of these docs things. Right at the top.
Oh, yeah,
right there. Yeah. And so you'll end up there as well. So you can see everybody that's kind of contributed to these docs. So
PR Merger 6, which is one of our automated tools. But yeah, these are all actual people who've contributed to the docs. And some of these are Microsoft people. Some of these are just community members. It's pretty cool. If you want to get your name out there, I can contribute to the Microsoft docs, put that on your resume. Do it.
And docs in general can be a really good way to kind of jump into an open source project. It doesn't have to be docs directly, but if you're looking to get involved in open source, one of the things you can do is if you're walking through something and it doesn't seem quite right, a lot of the times the docs for especially open source projects are open source. And so you can go and find them and submit changes, even if it's just a spelling mistake or a duplicate word or something, just kind of cleaning some of those things out. It helps you figure out how the whole pull request thing goes, and helps the people, the maintainers of that project, kind of know who you are and start recognizing, oh, it's another pull request from Foo. So we kind of get that. Can be a really fun way to kind of jump into an open source project.
In fact, you know what? Let's do that now, because after you've we got a rogue comment quote mark there. So I go in here. If I just search, there it is. It's right at the top. So I just click edit, and then I go. There we go. Delete that. Rogue single quote. I can't spell rogue. Rogut. Rogue single quote. Propose changes. Create pull request. Done. Don't think we need much of a comment. There is a rogue single quote. You better see there that there is a single quote. And that's it. Raise a pull request against docs in public. Anybody could have done that. But yeah, nice. So we decided we weren't going to fix docs because we'd have to fix it everywhere. So we thought it might be better to raise an issue against Custo. Wouldn't it be nice if Custo was a bit smarter? Rather than just keep saying, I don't know this, I don't know this. Custo should know that this is a database. It's add database. I don't know why I keep zipping to the end of the line. It's quite annoying. Add database this. That's a database name. There has to be a database name. That's just part of the syntax. So kind of feels like we could raise this in Custo.
Yeah, I think it's also another important thing, even in your own code, when you're working on things like this. Having actionable errors is actually a really useful thing. Like if you run this, you get a syntax error with a client request GUID, it looks like. That doesn't help you solve this. What do you do with that? So having some descriptive errors in your code that don't just say request failed or message timed out, but maybe message to supply chain monitoring tool timed out, or IoT scales is not a database, or could not be found. Things like improving those error message and doing that can actually help you later, because especially with like enterprise software, it's typically not something where you create it, you submit it, and then you never touch it again. It's something that will live for years and years through you and then a bunch of other team members. And so you might be maintaining code and seeing errors that you never wrote and weren't even on the team when they were written. And so having these pointers that say, hey, look here, or this thing isn't working, can be a lot more useful than it didn't work. So
yeah, if you put good error messages, future you will love you for it. And obviously the other future developers will love you for it, because I've written bad error messages and then they've bitten me later because I don't understand my own error messages. So yeah, I mean, this is syntax error, nothing. Not so helpful.
Yeah. One typical thing that I see in code is the Pokemon exception, which is catch exception. We just catch every exception and then log out error message, and that's it. That can work, but it can be really vague and hard to understand once you actually like get into the logs and it starts happening in production. Because a lot of errors aren't blue or green and red. They're not always it's working and it's not working. Sometimes it's this works 90% of the time, but 10% of the time it doesn't work. How do you figure out why that 10% isn't working? That can be really hard if you don't have descriptive logs and metrics to kind of help you along the way. So,
yes. Yeah, you want to over-index on the information there, so when it does hit those 10% that don't work, you can trace it back.
Yeah. So yeah, our thinking was let's open a pull request against Custo and see what happens. I don't think have really talked with anybody about doing this. We're just opening this and seeing what happens, and also kind of showing you here's how you can bring issues up to other people. So
yeah, I guess one thing we should mention is in the Azure Data Explorer, I think it's some of the overview that mentioned it, Custo is open source. So Custo is the query language that you use. Custo query language. It's an open source language initially invented by the Azure Data Explorer team. So because it's open source, we can contribute to the language in some way, shape, or form. Even if that's just raising issues, we can contribute. If this was a closed source language, then that'd be problematic. We have to find another way to give feedback about this. But because it's open source, we can contribute. So if I just Google with Bing Custo GitHub, there we have Microsoft /Custo query language public. Again, this is not, I work for Microsoft, therefore I can see a private thing. This is public. And so we can raise an issue against this. Let me just zip this over to my one that's logged in with my work account. Profiles in Edge are very cool. I like this. I have a different profile I use for all my Azure stuff that I create, because in Microsoft, when we actually spin stuff up in Azure, we've got all the controls around that to make sure it's all secure and protected, which can be fun for doing demos, because we don't necessarily want to put those same controls in for a demo. We don't want to spend all day just doing virtual networking just to spin up an IoT hub. So I kind of have my own one I use for Azure, and then I have my Microsoft profile, which I use for doing all the Microsoft stuff. So how do we do this? You've probably done more issues than me.
So there's a few different things. You can start with a contributing doc if there is one. It doesn't look like there is one, but there is a contribute section in the README. A lot of the times you'll see this get moved into its own contributing.markdown file, just in the top of whatever repo it is. Mm-hmm. Sorry, there's a train. Yeah, cool. So we're gonna do a code train, and then there's a train. Anyway, the best place to start is look for contributing anything. Another thing that can be useful, I don't know, I didn't see it in this repo, but there can also be pull request or pull request templates or issue templates that will actually say, hey, this is a bug in the software. Here's all the things we want for a bug. Or here's a feature request. Here's all the things we want for that. Because sometimes they'll be different. Typically with bugs, you want to be descriptive and say, here's what I did. Here's how you can reproduce it. And here's why it doesn't work. One of the important things there is actually make it something that's reproducible. Because the people who might be encountering this might be either familiar with the tool or have a different way of doing something. So if you just say, create this database, are you going through the Azure portal? Are you going through the CLI? Are you using some other tool to do that? Being really specific about, here's what I did. Here's the exact command I wrote. I ran it, and this is what I saw. That can really help you kind of figure out what's going on.
And it's also good to work through those steps yourself as well, because you can write that. You can write it down. I did this, but then actually go back and do those steps, because sometimes just by doing that you realize, oh, actually no, I made a mistake in my steps, and now I fixed it. Right, or I missed a step in my description, something like that.
Yeah, and an important thing is open source is a lot of the times free. So you can just go and grab this code. And that typically means that maintainers are not getting paid for what they're doing. This is a Microsoft thing, so it's slightly different. But if you're just raising issues against a public thing that was created by maybe one person on their spare time, and if you're not being very descriptive and giving them a way to kind of figure out what to do, there's a good chance that is going to be deprioritized and lower on the list of things I want to do today, because it's more work. So if you make that less work, it will go faster because people will be more motivated to help out people who are being helpful. It's
You're
not always.
reducing your- Sorry.
Go ahead.
So you are reducing your personal workload by using the work of somebody else. So the least you can do is reduce their personal workload to enable them to support it.
Right, and maintaining an open source project can be a lot of work, because it's not just it's not just submitting code and doing all this. It's also triaging all of these bugs and going through and saying, this is something that we need to fix right now, because this is a security issue and it's going to cause a bunch of these other things. Or this, if we fix this and implement this feature, it's going to break all of these things. So figuring out how to prioritize that and how to walk through and understand all of that is kind of important. One thing you can do is thumbs up issues on repos that you think are important. That can be kind of helpful. It also helps when you're documenting issues. If you're really descriptive, it means other people will find that issue when they search it because they ran into the same thing. So GitHub typically hides closed issues, but they can be a really good place to go if you're running into a problem on a project. If you're running into this syntax error, for example, and you want to see, did somebody else do this? And was it already raised as an issue? Should we actually, one, raise this issue? And two, is there a solution? Has somebody already solved this and then they've closed it? Is there a feature request coming in the next release? Because issues can get closed before they get shipped out to you. You might just need to wait for the next release or something. So trying a few of those things can be kind of helpful. You can also link to other issues and say, hey, I saw this thing happened. I tried to do that and ran into this other thing. Maybe we can solve it with X. So yeah, open source is cool. It's all about community building and integrating with communities of people building and doing the same thing that you're doing. So
yeah. Just do a quick shout out to President Not Sure One, who's gone hype train when they heard the train come past. So yes, that train is hyping us up. It is the hype train. I think also just Sam, just to kind of sum up what you're saying, really, a lot of around this open source and giving back and contributing, all that is be kind. I think is an important mantra for anybody approaching open source. It's not just about being kind and giving someone a good description of the problem to help them fix it. It's on the other side of open source are humans. And there seems to be a lot of people who are terrible when it comes to things they're getting for free. If you ever try to give away something for free on Craigslist or what have you, you kind of see some of this. And the same applies with open source software. Here's this software. It's absolutely free. Well, it doesn't do what I want. Therefore, I'm going to shout at you. It's like, that's terrible. That is absolutely terrible. And there are people who will literally get abusive on GitHub issues, expecting somebody who's built code in their spare time to give up their own spare time to deal with one special case. Don't be that person. Be kind. People are putting a lot of work into open source projects because they love doing it. Don't put them off. There's been a number of cases seen recently where high profile open source organizers and contributors have gone, I'm out. I'm done. Nope. I'm going to close down this project. Done. Can't be bothered dealing with everyone because it's just too much stress and too much work dealing with people being, not being kind. So be kind.
that also leads into a really good thing at the very bottom of your screen there, the code of conduct. This is not a thing that is unique to Microsoft. It is something that you'll find in a lot of open source things, and it's becoming more and more common. You'll see codes of conduct for contributors, and this typically expands to everything. If there's a Slack channel with moderators and things, that those same people are probably on the GitHub and are going to take the same stance. So following and at least just being aware of code of conducts and CLAs, which are slightly different, they kind of allow licensing things, can be useful. It's something that you should be aware of. You're probably not, if you're acting nice and with good intent, you're probably not going to run afoul of these. Most of them are intended to catch trolls or people who are being intentionally disruptive, or who are otherwise antagonizing other members of the project, and sort of again, going back to the community thing, making the community less fun to be a part of, or creating a community that might be exclusive to people. So Yeah.
So if you are running an open source project and you want to put a code of conduct, I think our code of conduct is open source. You can just use it for yourself. It's adapted from the Contributor Covenant version 2. So I think you can just use the same code of conduct for yourself, but it's great. It's be kind to everyone, and just gives more details on what that means. But it's be kind, don't be mean. And Bob the Lonely Turtle says, so nice to see Microsoft embracing open source after being against it for so many years. Yes, as a company, we made mistakes. If you'd asked me 20 years ago would I work for Microsoft, the answer would have been no. But we embrace open source. We do a lot of things in the open. We don't always approach open source projects the way that more public open source projects are approached, because we have obviously internal commitments to our product lines. So, we've customized open source, but it's been built primarily for Azure Data Explorer first. So anyone can use it, but it's open source, but we kind of have to keep a bit of control because we have products that rely on it. But we also contribute very heavily to other open source projects. I think we're one of the biggest contributors to Linux. And it's the best way to work. It's the best thing we can do. So yeah, I'm very happy that we embrace open source. It's Microsoft and the company that I'm proud to work for. Really, as I said, you've asked me 20 years ago in the days of Linux as a cancer, then no. So
another thing I really like is it makes adopting open source. It means that your skills become transferable. You actually can skill up and get more skilled than you might otherwise if you have some internal proprietary dashboarding software, for example, that only works at this company and is written by this team. And if you want any changes to it, you have to go through them. Having something that is public and open source that you could even go in and say, hey, this doesn't work for us, we need to change this, can be really useful. And it can mean that you can get skills that kind of follow you throughout your career, instead of just ending whenever whatever you're doing right then stops, or you change your tech stack, or whatever happens. It becomes a really useful thing. Plus, it's a really good way to learn, because the cool thing with open source is it's not just people at your company contributing to it. A lot of the times when you're working in a company, there'll be ways of doing things. It's always happened this way. The cool thing with open source is you have people all over the world, people from Africa or Asia or North America or South America, all contributing with very different perspectives about, hey, we need to do this. And that can be a really fun way to kind of iterate on technology and see all the different ways people might want to use this thing, and all the different ways people are using this thing. Plus, it makes the docs more accessible, because now your blog post about how to make a dashboard in Grafana can be useful for not just you and your team, but can be useful for people in somewhere else, or just maybe getting started and learning. So,
one good example of that is in .NET, for example. .NET, one of the lead members of the kind of .NET steering committee, contributed quite a lot of the .NET guidance. A gentleman called John Skeet, who works for Google. You would say Google is one of our competitors, but no. But they use .NET, we use .NET. Everyone uses .NET. And John is a very important part of the .NET community, because it's open source and John can be involved. So yeah, we want everyone to be involved. We don't just want everything to be just the Microsoft way, because then that could go terribly wrong. So Bob the Lonely Turtle says, some would say .NET works for John Skeet. Well, it is actually true that the root object of .NET, the one that system.object actually derives from, is system.johnskeet. That is true. If you've not come across John Skeet before, he used to have the highest rep on Stack Overflow. He probably still does. And there was a whole load of jokes. If you remember the Chuck Norris jokes, about how, Chuck Norris didn't catch the coronavirus caught Chuck Norris, or, there's all these different Chuck Norris superhero jokes. There's a whole lot of John Skeet jokes like that, also actually on Stack Overflow. So if you know the .NET world, you fancy a giggle, just Google for the John Skeet jokes, the John Skeet Chuck Norris jokes. There's loads of them. They are quite funny. Very nice chap, John Skeet. I used to live close to him back when I was in the UK. Very nice chap. So anyway, we were going to raise submit bugs, and there's this nice little submit bugs thing here. So let's click on it, see what happens. That takes us to the issues. Now, the right thing to do is search, as you're saying, Sam. We should actually search for this, shouldn't we?
Yes. So by default, it's only going to show you the open things. So you can see GitHub automatically inserts a few search terms. These work with other search engines too, but GitHub does them by default, just so you're only searching issues and you're only searching open issues. So by default, other things that are currently open. So these are things that are active or have not been triaged yet, which means the team might not have gotten to them yet. When you're searching for things, probably remove the is open and also include closed things. So you can see not just issues that exist right now, but issues that have existed in the past. Potentially there was a feature suggestion or something that was similar to what you're thinking about, and a discussion that's already happened that doesn't need to be repeated. So it can be a good way to go and find that.
So if I then go to here and add syntax error, which is what we're seeing, there's no results that have got syntax error.
Right. So that's usually a good suggestion that maybe we should create an issue and just document this a little bit for people that come next.
So let's go new issue. Now there isn't an issue template here.
No, there is not. They do recommend you read. GitHub will automatically do this. So one of the cool things GitHub does is if you add a code of conduct or a contributing thing, when somebody tries to submit a pull request to your repo, they will see these automatically, which can be a really nice way to kind of say, hey, here's what to expect. And that can kind of help you understand, like, are feature requests accepted? Are bugs going to be looked at? How do they get triaged? What should we expect? We just took a look at those. So, and there isn't, the contributing thing is in the markdown or README, sorry. So yeah.
It does also see reported security vulnerability. Check out the project security policy. And we have a security policy, because security issues, it says it here, please do not report security vulnerabilities through public GitHub issues. So this comes down to kind of responsible security. If you find an issue in something that allows it to be hacked, the right thing to do is report it privately so that it can be fixed, and then the disclosure of the vulnerability managed and then planned. Yeah, you want, because ideally, for example, with this is a Microsoft product. If you find a security hole in it, we at Microsoft want to know so that we can fix it. We can contact all the customers who will be impacted by it, get them fixed, and then make responsible disclosure. Because it's important that we don't just put these vulnerabilities out in the wild, because that just opens up the world to hacking. Now, one thing that we do is we have a bug bounty program. So if you follow these rules and you find a bug, you can get cash. Whereas if you just make it public, you won't get cash. And it just a headache for everybody, because by making it public, that means people get hacked, and that's not good disclosure. Obviously, if it gets disclosed and nothing happens, then the responsible thing to do is make it public. But there's lots of publicly defined ways to manage security issues that are found. So if you do find security vulnerability, go in here, read the instructions. Now, ours is not really security vulnerability, so don't really need to worry too much about that.
Right. The security thing is also applicable across projects. A lot of companies have a bug bounty program because they want you to disclose that way, so it's not public and people can exploit it. Typically, it will outline a little bit of a delay, so you can have maybe a 30-day period to implement a patch and ship that out to users before something happens. I'm not entirely familiar with Microsoft's bug bounty program or a lot of the other ones, because security is not really the thing that I spend a lot of time working in. But that's an area to kind of check out if you start finding issues and things.
So for example, here you go. Here's some of the bug bounties. If you find an issue in Azure, you can get up to $60,000 for responsibly disclosing it. And Microsoft Identity Framework, $100,000, $20,000 for Xbox. Obviously, that's prioritized. So, if you find it in our identity framework, this is kind of logging in, then We want to pay you a lot more than if you find something in, say, .NET. But then it's just the whole Hyper-V, so our virtualization platform, $250,000 you can get for being responsible. So, yes, do it right. If you're doing security, do it right. So anyway, let's raise this issue. Now, I could just go syntax error in query, and that's utterly useless. We want to have a title that gets the root of the problem, and then a description that defines this is the problem, these are the steps to reproduce it, this is what I think would be a good outcome for the problem. So when using table names with special characters without escaping, the error message is unhelpful.
Yeah, I think that's useful. An important thing is the title here is what's going to show up in search engines when people start coming across this, or in the team's backlog when they start reviewing this and thinking about that. So giving people something useful to say, hey, this is what it's doing. This is why we should fix it. That's the thing people are going to see in team meetings or Scrum backlogs or however the teams manage that. So.
Wasn't typing out database name. So if I change this thing, when using database names to special characters without escaping, the error message is just syntax error, because that's what we hit. We hit syntax error.
Right.
So if I search for custo syntax error, by having that in the title here, that's more likely to be found.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's sort of what we're aiming for. So.
So custo allows. They actually call it special characters. That's a good question. Let me go back to one here. They called it entity names. So it's not.
Yeah, they do call it special characters. Right under the identifier quoting in that second line.
There you go. We'll have one special. Yeah, special characters noticed above. Yeah.
Yep.
So Custo allows special characters in entity names as that. I'm doing this in Markdown, so I'm doing the dashes here, make that look code format. Doing a bit of explanation, which is kind of obvious to the Custo team, but just helpful for the person reading this. If somebody else hits the issue, they kind of come across, they might come across this. When using these names in queries, you need to escape them according to the Custo name document. So I'm just putting a little link here. This is the markdown for the entity name documentation. Now, this is the link I've got. In this link, we've got en-us. This means if anyone clicks the link that gets created, they'll take them to the US English language documentation. I'm going to take that out. And that way, if somebody's who's looking at this issue doesn't have US English as their default language, they'll actually get redirected to their default language version of this doc. So it might be in Spanish or French. So I'm going to take that out. And this gives me this nice little link here, because Markdown. So that's kind of the background to it. Allow special characters. When using them, you have to escape them. Fortunately, if you are not aware that these need to be escaped and use them in queries, the error message you get just says syntax error and doesn't lead you towards solving the problem. That's what we hear. Spelling is terrible. That's what we hear. We had the issue. It would be better if the error message provided more guidance. For example, I have been setting up Azure Data Explorer to show data in Grafana using the, let's actually put a link for the guide. Where is it? It's how-to guides, visualize data. Take the name of this doc here. So I'm actually going to link the actual doc. So that way it kind of helps the reproduction steps. I am working through this doc. So that kind of helps. And now one top tip, some people would just put using this doc and then just putting the link just says this doc or here. That's not very useful for people using things like screen readers. It's kind of better to actually have the title of the doc instead. So using the Visualize Data, Manage Data Explorer and Grafana guide, that's much more accessible than just saying using this, something like that. So we set up Manage Data Explorer to show data in Grafana. One of the steps I'm using my own database and table names, and my database is called, what do we call it? We called it IoT Scales. There's a step to set up Azure Active Directory, and you run this query. Okay. So if I do that, I'm literally going to take the query that's here. Down here, down here, down here. Here we go. I don't think what no, no block there. Is this for my database? Doing the following. Let's actually take the thing I ran, which is this here. Now, I'm going to remove my app ID. Yeah, not really that private compared to the secrets, but you know what? I'm going to just remove it anyway.
That is a good thing to call out. Is personal things are a good thing to remove, especially if you are if your company uses an open source project. Make sure when you are opening bugs that you're not leaking internal stuff in the errors and things that you're submitting to those open source projects. Because I've seen that a few times where people are talking about specific tech stacks or something that probably shouldn't have been disclosed. You can overshare a little bit. So being a little bit cautious about what you're writing in these is important, especially because with Git, getting rid of things can be a little bit difficult. Because it's a source control thing, and so it's going to track it. It's just like putting a secret there. It can just be a little bit more difficult because you're having a conversation, right? And so if you start disclosing things that you shouldn't, oops. but just try to avoid that.
Yeah. So these issues are public. This is all public. So another cool feature of GitHub. I used a screen capturing tool to capture the actual error. If I go here, I can paste and it automatically upload the image for me, which is nice. And then I'm going to copy the contents of this image. And I'm going to drop that in as the alt text. I'm going to get rid of the client request ID because that's not useful to the alt text. And it's just a screen reader would read client request ID, Custo Web V2 semicolon 086. It's just not good for a screen reader. So we don't need that. So I'm going to take that out there. The syntax error is not described. It is just shown as a syntax. And that's the issue. That's how to recreate it. It's so set the background. We allow the special characters. If you don't know they need to be escaped and use them in queries, you get an error, which doesn't lead you towards solving the problem. That's the issue. We cannot work out what the problem is easily without knowing more about the custom language. Now, here's my examples. Here's kind of reproduction steps. In fact, let me set it, for example, to reproduce. That's the important thing.
Maybe make that a header, like a header 2 or something.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Header 2. 2 little hashes there gives us this nice little header. There we go. So to reproduce, we're setting up Azure Data Explorer to show data from Grafana using this doc. Using my own database and table names, and my database is called IoT Scales. The step to do this, I ran this, I get this error. Nice little picture there, syntax error. The syntax error is not described, it's just shown as a syntax error. Now, some people do these things with kind of expected and actual. So expected behavior, it should work or give me a decent error. Actual, it don't work, gives me a bad error. It kind of depends how you want to write it. The important thing is you've got to get across the intent. So I've got across the intent of what actually happens. So what should we put? Should we put preferred result, expected output?
Yeah, I think expected is typically the word of choice. These things are kind of fluid. People write them in different ways. And typically, if there's a template, there's usually a reason for the template. It means the team can review it a little bit easier because then you can scan through it. Especially if you're in a big project, you get lots of errors. You get lots of bugs for all sorts of different things. And so jumping through that noise, well, not ideal. Sometimes important things might get overlooked longer than they might need to be, just because there's a lot there. So,
yeah, the less work the way the triagers and maintainers have to do, the higher up the list it becomes. So, expect this should be more descriptive to help him define and fix the issue. So, based on the structure of the query, the text in spaces after add database should be a database name. So it so rather, let's put this in a separate line. So rather than the database name, so is it possible to for the parser, the bit in the query that actually goes through and works all out, to know this and compare the text to known database names or just know this, and guide the user to escape the name if it contains kind of a question. It should be more descriptive. That's the most important thing. But is it possible to add smarts to it? Because we're saying add database this. This has to be a database name. That's kind of what add database is expecting afterwards. So can we be smart and say, okay, after add database, you've got something with special characters. This is definitely a syntax error. I can't parse it, but maybe you want to escape that. It'd be nice to be helpful. Just try and nudge me in the right direction. What do you think of this? Do you think that's a good? Let me bring up the preview. That's probably a clear way.
I think so. You spelled used at the end instead of user. At very last.
And guide the
last
used.
sentence. Yeah.
Yes.
But, other than that, I think that this is pretty good and descriptive. It kind of walks through what it is and what the problem is. Plus, hopefully, it's something that people will be able to find because, like, if you paste the error into a search engine now, there's a good chance that something like this might come up, which is sort of what you want. This is a form of documentation for projects. As much as actual docs are documentation, so are issues because lots of people are using this and they're running into all sorts of different things. Or maybe they're using like 6 different things together. And that combination just really doesn't work unless you do this specific thing. Having that called out an issue and how to address it can be really useful. So,
okay, so let's submit that. And there we go. That issue is now there for all eternity.
Right, and then there's a few.
thumbs up it.
There's a few things that might happen as part of this. Sometimes there's a bot that will run through and make sure that you have signed the CLA, for example. Because typically contributions to open source projects that have a CLA will not accept contributions from people who have not signed it. Kubernetes, for example, if you want to contribute to Kubernetes, you need to sign the CLA. And that avoids some of the complications of open source. You might also see labels automatically get added, where the teams start triaging it. Another thing you might see is people thumbs upping the issue. You go into the issues of a repo, you can actually sort them by thumbs up, which can be a good way to kind of help prioritize and figure out, hey, lots of people are saying this is a thing. They're giving support to this. Maybe we should look at this, and this should be a higher priority than it is. So
let me see the docs one, and you might actually see some of the things you've been talking about. So in the docs one, for example, this doc, a bot added the do not merge label because this needs to be reviewed. They've automatically requested a view from Shlomo Sage. And the PR merger 12 is thank you for contribution. The author's been notified. So there's a lot of stuff happened in the bot. And then some reviews have been done. And part of these reviews, these checks, if I show all checks, license CLA. So Sam, you're saying about the CLA. The CLA is the contributor license agreement, I think it is. And so you have to sign this to say, I give Microsoft rights to the code I commit. So, and this code is not copyright. So it's proven. So it's my way of saying what I commit is, to the best of my knowledge, is not copyright. We need to do that to make sure that the code contributions aren't owned by someone else.
Yeah, the reason for that has historically it can get complicated in open source if you don't have one of these, because you can contribute a few lines of code, maybe fix a few bugs, and then 5 years later decide actually this project can't use any of my code.
Mm-hmm.
Now what? You can't roll back 5 years of stuff, or if you want to relicense a project, for example, you would need everybody that contributed to agree to the new license for the code that they contributed, which gets really difficult if you have thousands of contributors. It becomes a really, really complicated issue. CLAs can help with other things, but help with those as well. So, yeah.
No, well, I'm gonna do the little secret thing. Okay, so as a Microsoft employee, I can actually sign this off. And I wonder whether that's going to remove set it to auto merge. So in our internal branches, we can actually sign off changes, and that will set it to auto merge. I wonder if it's going to do that.
Looks like you got an error already.
No. No. There we go. So I try to sign it off, which I can do on some internal repos. It's actually said only the author can sign off for changes.
Huh. Yeah. Okay.
There we go. That's pretty cool. So the whole bot thing manages that for me. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
You'll probably see this a lot with GitHub has some of these built in for like PRs. You may need ownership approval in order to merge it. So you can't by default merge things at all into the main branch of your repo. There's different ways to kind of handle that. GitHub provides a few things. But you can also use GitHub Actions to kind of roll your own experience. That kind of does everything that you might need it to do, like checking the CLA, making sure that all tests are passing, that if you build a release off of whatever it is, maybe that still works. Some of that stuff can be kind of complicated and specific to your project. So that's what GitHub Actions is for. But cool, we've submitted our bug. Should we do a dashboard?
Let's do a dashboard. Before we do that, I guess question for our viewers: has anybody made any open source contributions? Whether it's just raising issues or changing code. If you have, put it in the chat. We'd love to kind of know what you've done. Whether you've done just removed a single quote, or whether you've actually built an open source project. Put it in the chat. We want to hear.
Or if you're looking to get involved with open source, and you're looking for some help with that, also consider maybe reaching out to us, because that would be something that we could actually help you with, and help you get involved with maybe a project that you might want to help get contributing with or start getting involved with and exploring that community. So if that's something you want, then go for it.
Yeah, maybe we could do an actual show, getting some people involved in open source projects. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Dark Side used to work on Bot Framework. Oh, awesome. So Bot Framework is a framework for bots. It's a tool for building out kind of chat bots and similar kind of things like that. So yeah, Dark Side used to work on that. Awesome. Cool.
Bot Framework was cool. Cool.
Okay, cool. So we ran our thing. We gave the permission. If I put it back in there, it should also run again. It should be fine to run again. Yeah, so we've now got our access on there. So now what we can do, we can go to Grafana and we can add, where's the thing to do the data?
Down below in that gear on the left-hand side, there you're going to see data sources.
There we go.
So you click add a new data source and you'll see all of these things. The Azure Data Explorer data source is something that we added. This is not default with Grafana, so you will not see this if you just start running Grafana. You do need to install this. There are instructions in the Docker or container documentation that will walk you through how to do that. But you do need to actually say we need this because otherwise it's not going to work.
Yeah, this is the bit we did in when we ran our Docker container. We said GF install plugins, Grafana Azure Data Explorer data source. So that's what we pass through to it. It's an environment variable, I guess, for Grafana install plugins to tell Grafana to install that plugin. That's how we did it. So let's add this. And so this is what we worked through last time. Let's zoom in a little bit. We've got the AOD application. We've run this. Oh, now this is interesting. We could probably also, not now, but later on, raise an issue against this plugin because it's got your database name and this has got special characters in it and this is not escaped.
I wonder if underscores work. They might, because what we're thinking is the minus is subtraction and is treated as arithmetic, but underscores typically ignore that.
You're right. Identifiers consisting only of letters, digits, and underscores do not require quoting when the identifier is being referenced because the underscore is not an operator. The dash, that is. IoT minus scales is mathematical operation, isn't it? So you're right. Underscores, we don't need it.
Cool. but yeah, this is also kind of highlighting that thing of, hey, you might need to call this out in a bunch of different places. If we call it out in the compiler, hopefully everybody that needs to see the error sees the error. And it doesn't clutter up the docs and add a bunch of extra information and make it more intimidating to kind of get started. And suddenly you have all these tips and extra things. And oh, by the way, you need to know this. Because that gets a little overwhelming when you're learning something new. So yeah.
Okay. So let's fill in our connection details. The cloud, Azure Cloud is Azure. There's Azure US Government and Azure China, which are kind of separate clouds. So if you're part of the US government, you have a separate cloud to the rest of the US, for example. We need a cluster URL, and that's from our actual IoT cluster. So let's go back to here. And this is our cluster URL, iot.westus2.custo.windows.net. So we'll drop that in there. Tenant ID. So this is our directory ID from our Azure Active Directory application. And then our client ID is the application ID here. Copy and paste, copy and paste. And then we have the client secret. And this is kind of like the magic key. This is the secret code, the password, whatever you want to call it. And that, we need to create one. So notice they're not here. You can't see it. And go certificates and secrets. This is one we created before. Now you notice I can't get the value. We created this last week, but I can't get it. And you'll see it says here, client secret values cannot be viewed except from immediately after creation. Be sure to save the secret when created before leaving the page. And this is kind of a thing to highlight. There's a lot of these secrets. When you create it, you get one opportunity to copy that, and then it's gone. That's to stop anybody getting hold of the secret ever again.
Well, and also I would say it's probably a good thing to plan to be able to re-roll these secrets. That is an important security thing. Is if somebody gets the secret, they can access this using these credentials that we're providing. We're making this public, so that might be not great. But if somebody does get a hold of your secret for any reason, maybe it ends up in a Git commit, or maybe it gets posted in some channel in your chat thing, or just gets leaked in some other way. You want to be able to re-roll these secrets as relatively quickly and relatively frictionlessly, because if it's a big thing and requires doing a lot of work, that's going to happen the same time if you actually really do need to re-roll your secrets and really do need to change them. So,
in fact, if I do new client secret here, you see we've got an expiry date. So it's trying to force you to roll it. There isn't a never expires. I guess custom, you could say it expires, in the year 3 billion, but these are designed to expire.
Yeah, and you'll probably get an email or something a bit in advance, so hey, this is coming up. We need to do this. That just helps you keep things separate. Another thing you might see, and I see this a lot with other Azure things, and you might get 2 secrets for a lot of connection things. You might get 2 of them that they're the same thing. And the reason for that is if you leak one of them and your application uses 2 secrets, if you need to re-roll one of those and it becomes inactive, you still have one working secret. So your app doesn't go down. It still works. And then you can inject the new one that you just re-rolled back into it. So you see here primary key and secondary key, and primary connection string and secondary connection string. Either one of those should work. They should both do the same thing. But if you use both of them, it gives you that resiliency. If something breaks and maybe your primary key doesn't work anymore, you needed to change it. Now you can still keep working. You can continue using the secondary key without bringing down prod. So,
yeah. So you can see you've got the options here to regenerate primary, secondary, or swap the keys. So it's just kind of built in the options to change it. It's good practice to make sure that you have a calendar reminder to change your keys every now and again where you can. Obviously, it's kind of hard if you've got firmware on an IoT device. Don't want to necessarily update that. But if you have both primary key and secondary key embedded in some kind of encrypted module on your IoT device, it can try both to connect. And if one leaks, you can at least cancel one without having to flash firmware on your devices.
Yeah.
So let's get the secret. We did have one before, and you may remember I noted it down in my .stuff file. I did call it stuff, and someone suggested putting dot at the start, so it's secret. I did note it down. Obviously, this is very bad practice, noting it down. It's okay to put like a temporary scratch pad. Just copy this here so that I don't lose it while I go to this new tab here and do it, and then delete it. But you don't be saving it. But I did that. But hey, I'm showing it on a live stream, so going to be rolling this later. Don't you worry about that. So we go here, and I put my client secret. No.
One of the cool things, actually, that I've been learning is if you use a password manager, a lot of them have both CLIs and they have a way to store just data. So you can store these secrets in your password manager and then inject them into where they need to be using that CLI. So you can actually get maybe your signing keys, your private signing keys to sign code or do whatever you need. You can do that, and it's pretty cool. So that's something that I've been learning recently.
Azure Key Vault can manage a lot of this for you anyway. It's going to actually manage a lot of stuff through Key Vault. So it can roll your keys and all that. So your application never actually gets the key. It loads it from Key Vault.
I need to play with that more. It's been on my list. So.
I need to play with it more, but it does a lot of this stuff for you, which is very nice. That's
a topic for another code lab. Every Tuesday at 4 Pacific. We learn new things. But anyway, I'm gonna stop advertising my own stuff.
Go for it. Go on.
Anyway.
So we put this in there. So if I click reload schema, that should hopefully. I wonder if all that. No, that hasn't picked up the database. Oh well. So that should be the information we need. So if we save it and test it.
There you go.
Data source updated. Oh, and there we go. It's now filled in the database schema, the default database, IoT scales. So it's picked it up. It's successfully connected and picked it up as a default database.
So one of the cool things with Grafana is it can be really smart, and it can kind of give you a more graphically intuitive thing rather than just typing all the information you need. Especially with some query languages, you might actually not even need to know the syntax for Prometheus or Graphite, because I don't remember it. But it gives you a way to kind of visually craft these things. So this is really cool.
So if I click the explore button, wait, can run a query. Okay.
Cool. I have no idea what this is doing.
From weights, format as table. Let's just do a table. There we go.
There you go.
Here's a table of weights.
Cool. So
as a time series and run that.
I think, yeah. So I think we might need a time, or we might need some x-axis for this, so it actually knows when these things are occurring. Because I don't think we're just grabbing the weights. That's the only thing. I don't know how to get the message timestamp from IoT Hub into this. That's a problem that I haven't quite figured out yet, because the weights is too far down, right? It's just the JSON blob that we sent, not the time signature from the device in IoT Hub.
This is where we hand over to you. I know nothing about Grafana, so this is your problem now.
Great. I have no idea how to solve this. What's happening here? Because this is kind of useful. Is we have like a graphical way of implementing queries against our table. So we didn't write any KQL or Custo. It's just there, and there actually looks like drop downs, so you can actually just kind of toggle between things. If you have a bunch of tables and databases and data sets, you can grab different things.
I'm sorry, Sam. I'm going to have to interrupt briefly. I need you to carry on talking about databases and Grafana just for a couple of seconds, because for those type 1 diabetics in the room, they may have seen something like that. That number is lower than that number should be. So you are now witnessing a type 1 diabetic and very slightly hypoglycemic live on stream. Don't say we don't do everything for you. So I'm going to mute myself and just grab myself a couple of glucose tablets, and I'll be right back.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening here. First off, we're in the Explore tab of Grafana. There are two different ways that at least I use Grafana to view different things. Explore gives you a way to kind of write queries and see results. So if you need to quickly visualize some query, and it's not going to be something that you want in a dashboard, you would run this. This gives you kind of that I guess what you see is what you get thing. So what we're doing here is we have our databases that we created in Azure Data Explorer. And they're just drop-down stuff. So we can switch between those and change to whatever we want. We also have from, so that's selecting the tables that we're choosing. And then we're choosing a format. I believe the issue with time series, I'll need to double check the docs on this, but I believe because we have time series selected, we need a time. We need something to give an x-axis, because we're trying to create a chart that tracks weight over time. And if we only have weight, there's no other data value. You can see when we render this as a table, we only get the one weight value. And then there's a few other things that it looks like it adds here. These might change depending on the data source that you're using in Grafana. So if you're using something other than Azure Data Explorer, you might see a different appearance here. So in this case, you can do where, so you can filter things out. So maybe you have things tagged. So maybe tagged as location Redmond and location San Francisco. And we want to just query one of those locations. Or you can aggregate things, which would be a way to sum all the values up. So this isn't particularly useful here because we're tracking weight over time. But maybe if you have 400 errors, so all the 400 errors that occurred in your web service, you may want to aggregate everything in the 400 range under one thing, and all the things under 500 and so forth. That can give you a little bit more idea of what's actually going on. And you can group things. So if you need to do that as well. And then time shift, I believe, just shifts the time. So when things occurred. I don't think we need to worry too much about that, because that's just going to move your query back and forth. So I think that's everything. It also looks like there's an edit KQL button there, which is going to change what you see. So in this case, we get our custo thing. So now we can actually just write custo and run a query against that with that. Request is invalid, it looks like.
What is it? It's not top.
It's like take, maybe? I don't actually remember.
So thank you for take. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you for running things. So I quickly got some glucose tablets in me.
No worries. That's important. Yeah. So so this gives you a way to just write your own queries. If you need to do like joins or more complex operations, this can be useful. Or if you already have queries that you just want to build databases over, this way you can just copy them in and run them. So that's what you do. And then below that, you're seeing the outputs. In this case, we just have a table.
Because if I did weights count, for example, now, there you go, 16,824 records in there.
That is a lot of records.
That is a lot, yeah. Okay, so how do we get the times?
I don't know.
You said.
Because so those messages, when we looked at the original messages from IoT Hub that were exported, did have the times in them. But I think the data that we're tracking in Azure Data Explorer doesn't. And because we just have that one column of weights, we don't have anything that would do time, that would do when that occurred. So I think what we need to do is actually work here in Azure Data Explorer to figure out a way to add another column to this table. So we can actually have times associated with each of these. Does that make sense?
So do we need to create a new table then with a new mapping that brings the time in?
I think so.
If I go back to our actual IoT thing, and I in my database, IoT scales, if I data connections, because this is the one we've got at the moment. If I go here and do edit, we have this mapping. We don't have any system properties bringing in.
Which
one of these would be IoT Hub and queue time.
Yeah, I think that's what we want. It looks like there was a few different times. Depending on the data source you're using, it might change which one matters. There's a creation time and then queue time, and a few other things. But I'm curious if that will just update our database in place. And maybe
it probably won't, because we had to set up a mapping, didn't we? So if we go to edit on here, we had this mapping that we created. And so we didn't map. When we map, we're not actually adding anything to the column. We haven't mapped that column to anything.
Oh, so okay, so we need to create a new mapping in those exist in Data Explorer, correct?
I'm guessing so. If I go here and do edit, so we've got this IoT Hub and queue time. So I'm assuming that comes in. So we had a thing when we set it up. Ingest data, IoT Hub data connection. In here we had the mapping. Here we go. Date and time. So this is the system property. Okay. Date and time the device declared message received by IoT Hub. That's what we want. And then we need to add, I guess, the timestamp to the table.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So if we go here, let's see if we can run this create merge table, and our table is called IoT scales. Let's escape it, avoiding issues.
We've learned from that.
And then what we've got a weights, which was a real, and then we've got the like that. That's the syntax, and then we have it's the IT Hub enqueued time, wasn't it? If I go back up here, IT Hub enqueued time.
You probably don't want a hyphen in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is guessing it's probably a long because it's probably seconds since epoch.
I would assume so. Maybe there's a special date type. But let's go.
What we can do, we go to here. Let's actually monitor the built-in event endpoint.
It might be a date time. Looks like date time is a.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So is there a date time format?
Yep. It's just date time with no anything, and I imagine that's what we want. There's also a time span option here, and dynamic, which can do other things. I haven't really got through that far into the docs, but date time seems like a thing that matches what we're actually intending that to be.
Oh, called it IoT scales. It should not call it IoT scales because it's not called IoT scales. It's called, that's our database. It's actually weights, isn't it? Let's run that. Okay, cool. So now let's drop that table. The wrong one I created. So now we've got this extra column on weights now. So if I take 10 from that, our enqueue time is blank. Okay.
Okay. Is that because the data was already there and we just added a new column, I imagine?
Yeah. So so the command I ran was create merge table. So it merged it on.
Okay.
So
cool.
now,
and then our mapping should still because we have to map it. Right. Okay. So what the mapping is doing is mapping from our IoT Hub message into this table and figuring out how to translate from one data source into another. That's where I'm getting confused. So that's what we're doing here is figuring out what that all looks like.
So this is weight, which comes from weight. Oh. And then we have this. Let's go with the comma there. We also have the IoT Hub enqueued time. And we said that column was called IoT Hub enqueued time. So if we call this JSON mapping 2, this is the second one, run that. So that's got the second. So these are our two mappings, JSON mapping 1, JSON mapping 2. So now if we go back here and we edit this and change this to JSON mapping 2, update that. So we've added the event system properties. So we now get IoT Hub enqueue time coming in, updated the mapping in the table. So now I have the second mapping here, which has got the enqueued time.
Okay, so we should, I think, then re-ingest the data. It looks like that's what was happening. Does it update the data already in our database? Is sort of, I guess, what I'm curious about.
I doubt it will, because it doesn't know that we haven't mapped that data, so it's not there. So probably makes sense then. Would be Can we delete all the rows? Start again.
I suppose, yeah.
Use the clear. Okay, so if we go here and clear the data, clear table weights, and then go back to take 10, nothing. In theory, though, because we've got our data coming in, might take a while, but data should then feed in with the in-queue time.
Yeah, I think that's what we're expecting. So it might take a little bit for it to all go through our pipeline. Also, you probably don't want to clear your table right away. In other things,
Do not do what Jim just did.
Well, because this is a mostly here, I believe, and not as a like primary data source, but as a way of doing telemetry and analytics. I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's not like you're dropping prod, but it is a change. So, is this the issue? Because we ran into an issue before where we weren't getting data sent to.
No, it just takes time to come in.
Okay.
The reason we weren't getting it is because we didn't have we had the this pause of event hub compatible endpoint, and where we put the message routing in, it doesn't route to the event hub compatible endpoint. But we fixed that. We turned that back on. So it'll just take a bit of time for it to come through. Cool.
So let's actually jump back to Grafana, because now that row's there, we should be able to actually see something happen. I think.
If I just take 10.
Run that.
Oh.
Now you get a graph. And so this is the cool thing with Grafana, is it's really good at making fancy things out of whatever. The default one's a line chart. You can also do bar charts or points. And there's also custom community extensions if you want to customize things. What Jim is doing right now is filtering down his search. So if you click and drag on the thing, you'll notice the time change at the bottom there. And it actually zooms in on that selected piece. So this is a way to kind of scope in on your thing. Because typically when you're looking at this, you're not looking at the top 10. You're looking at hundreds of thousands of results typically. Really big time-based things like here's all the requests every second for the entire day. And so you might want to scope out into maybe a minute and say, here are these specific things. Here's the minute before our app stopped working. So it lets you do some of that stuff.
Okay, I'm just looking here to see if there's any data. Go to the health section. There's definitely it's stopped.
So why did that happen? Again, for people who might be new to this stream, we are learning this stuff. So we don't actually know the answer here. But whatever we've done has broken our data connection. And it looks like things are coming into IoT Hub. No, things are coming into... Yeah, things are going into IoT Hub, but they are not going all the way out to...
Could just be they're grouping up and they've yet to feed through. Where we reset the data connection, it could just be it's just offline for a while. Because I'm now monitoring the IoT Hub, and these are the messages that are coming through to IoT Hub. So the messages are definitely reaching the hub. Just haven't got here yet. And it's either broken or it's taking some time.
Yeah, it looks like it's dropping off. So maybe there's an issue with our connection that we've overlooked. I
wonder how we see errors.
Me too. Because maybe we broke the connection somehow by creating a second data mapping, because now there's two, right? And they both map to the same table.
But we picked the Oh, here we go. Show ingestion failures command.
None. Okay. Well, we tried.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so it was just taking a bit.
It was just taking a bit of time. Phew.
Okay. Cool.
If I refresh this. Okay, that was just taking a bit of time. So now if I go into here
and rerun that and scroll down, do we see anything? Maybe don't take 10. Just leave that off and just do weights. See what happens. You get a whole bunch of weights, and they have a time thing. Why don't they map onto our graph? You might actually because you change the time thing. So you are looking 20 minutes ago. If you look at the times on your bar chart,
yeah.
which is why you're not seeing that.
So how do I zoom back out?
I'm not entirely sure. If you scroll back up, yeah, at the very top there, you'll see your custom time thing. You just bring that down. It will give you some fancy things. You can say last 5 minutes, and there you go. So that's going to be the last 5 minutes of scales. So that's we didn't have to tell it what the primary axis was. It just figured it out, and now we have a cool chart.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So see, it's a little bit behind because the data's got to feed from the device into IT Hub, and then that's when we pick up the time. So this is the IT Hub and Q time. This is when IT Hub got the data. But then it's got to feed into Azure Data Explorer, be managed with the cluster, and be available to Grafana. So we're going to always be a little bit behind.
Yeah, but so one cool thing you can do if you scroll back up again, there is I'm not used to this. Actually, let's create a dashboard. That'll be more fun. So if you click dashboards, you can go home, or just click the plus button. That'll also work.
Create dashboard.
Create dashboard. And so Grafana separates things into panels. So you have different panels that contain different widgets that render different things. So we probably just want one or two. So we can either add a new panel, add a new row, or do something else. So in this case, we have a panel. It has a title. Same thing with graphs, because turns out this is just going to be a bunch of graphs. So you can give it a description as well, which can help be a little bit more useful for what's there. And then similar to how we had the Explorer giving you a query that you could write, we have the same thing here. So you can filter that as well. And then you can just run the query to get a preview of what you're going to see. That big blue button there. And I'm not sure what's going on.
I'm clicking it.
Yep. I don't think clicking it hard is going to help.
I click it more.
Why is this changing now? That's weird.
Table. Oh, that just took a while. Look, there it is there.
Okay. Yeah. So what's happening is Grafana is going out and querying Azure Data Explorer, grabbing all that data we've ingested, and then rendering a graph for us. In this case, we're at like minus 400 for the weight, but you get that. Then on the right side, you can kind of customize this and change how it looks. So you can see we added a title, and there's a description in the top left of these panels. So the description is hidden, but it has a little hover text, so you can see a little bit more about what it's actually describing here. And that will give you that. You can also explicitly give specific things that you're looking for. So if you scroll down on the right-hand side there, we've already written our query. You can change the graphs so it has a little bit more interpolation and looks a little bit fancier. Change points, things like that. But you can also, if you keep scrolling down, I think, you'll start seeing other fun things. So we can actually customize axes. You can give them names, and you can also apply mins and maxes. So if we're expecting this to maybe hold a kilogram of tea, and we're measuring in grams, so we could give it a maximum of 1,000. And then that would be what we'd sort of be expecting. And what that's going to do is bring our graph way up because we're in the negative some 400 or whatever. So that's the thing.
Minus 4. Where are we? I think I need to. Oh, it's -1. I put a weight on it. It's gone up, but it's still -200.
Yeah, minus lots. So, yeah, this is a way if you have some specific value that you're expecting it to be in, and it's maybe typically always constant at some value, maybe 100% uptime. Just having a graph scoped in at 100 isn't super useful if he doesn't have variance, but maybe it can ramp all the way up to 200, and you want to capture that without your graph changing scale. This can be a way for you to do that. Because if the graph changes scale and you don't notice it, that can be a little bit weird because you don't know what happened. There's other fun things that start getting added here.
I'm going to just do this, and we'll do the last 15 minutes for that. Just to see what we get. Oh,
that's weird.
Interesting.
I'm not entirely sure what happened there.
I don't know. I just reran it and it fixed itself.
Yeah, rendering things.
Ooh,
but there you can actually see when we actually added different things. This gives you a way to add units to it. So it just marks it with units. There's a bunch of weird ones. I think they just recently added like furlongs or something. And you can also change the palette so it will actually color shift as maybe it gets closer to 0, for example. So it turns more red the lower it gets. Just things that make it a little bit easier to kind of understand what your data is actually saying. So another thing, thresholds. This will change the color as you move below that. So if we turn these on, I think, yeah, show thresholds is below that, and that's currently off by default. But if you turn that on, you will see different thresholds. I'm not entirely sure.
Because we want this is a threshold above 80. We want a threshold of below something, don't we?
Yeah, so I think you can just drag that below with on the right-hand side there. I believe that's a handle on the right.
Oh, that thing there.
Oh, further to the right.
That is a delete.
Oh, okay. Small screens. I'm not entirely sure. Interesting. Okay. Other things, and sort of relevant to our uses, is alerts, which is not on that side.
Oh, hang on, anyway, threshold. So if I go green and the base is red, there we go. It's just about the color, isn't it? Yeah. So if you get below 80 grams, it goes red.
Perfect. And then what we can also do is if you go to that alerts on to your left there.
That one there?
Yeah. Dashboard isn't saved, so we need to save that. So alerts are a cool way if you need certain alerting mechanisms to actually alert you when things are happening. And this will actually cause Grafana to take action when certain things happen in your dashboards. So you can create alert rules and then integrate these with different things. So if you have Sensu for monitoring or some other thing that you want to actually send things out to, this can give you a way to actually write these alerts and then send it out to all sorts of different places.
So we want a query here to get when. Okay, so we run this query.
Yep.
That gives us like weights. And then when the last value of A, which is what the query is below, say 50, you got less than 50 grams of tea left.
Yep.
And then we can calculate this every minute. A value. Oh, well, I like this. So value every minute for 5 minutes. So it's not just it goes below, but we keep checking.
Right. So this will make sure you're below that condition for 5 minutes before sending an alert. Because nothing is worse than like having that one little blip and then getting called at 2 a.m. and waking up and the problem's already fixed.
So this solves our issue about how do we distinguish between you taking the tea jar off the scales to go and make tea and the level being down.
Right. Right. So this gives us a way to just kind of solve that, and we don't even need to write any code. It's just done.
So if we say 30 minutes, that's more than enough time. And if it's 30 minutes, then you've forgotten it.
Right. And then you can preview alerts, which shouldn't send anything out. Again, this can actually send values out. So right now it looks like it is alerting.
Okay. And then, but how do we actually? Where does the alert go? Because it is alerting because we're below. We are below because it's reading negative numbers at the moment because I need to reset it.
Right. So if you keep scrolling down, you'll see there's add details to your alert. So what this is going to do is like embed the dashboard ID, which means you will get a link to the dashboard in the alert that says, "Here's this thing isn't working. Here's a link. You can go and see it. It's not working."
Nice.
And add additional stuff, maybe some keys or something to kind of like say, "Hey, the IoT project is not working," and just give a little bit more context to why this stuff didn't happen. And then if you keep scrolling down,
I can't.
Oh, never mind. This is in a different place. Oh no.
There are errors in the form.
Errors in the form.
Folder. I don't have a folder. I need a folder.
Okay. This has changed, so I don't actually know what's going on here. That's exciting. But so what this does is creates alerts that end up, it looks like, into some folder.
Let's create a folder. New dashboard folder. T. Create that.
Sure.
Okay. Manage dashboards. Drag that into. Move into T. Okay, so that's our folder. It's got T in it.
And so you can see down below there, you'll have your recent things, and then there's your dashboard.
So if I go back here, if I try to get to, there we go, T.
Cool. And then if you save that,
cool,
you get saved. And yeah, I'm not entirely. So there used to be a way to figure out and send alerts to certain things. Looks like this might be it. Contact points is probably what you want.
Yeah.
And this will allow you to set up different things. So the default looks like it sends an email out to the Grafana admin, which is something that you made up. But you can also add on extensions. So if you have alerting things that are already part of it, you can send it to your Slack channel or to your Discord channel or to your Microsoft Teams channel, or send an email to people and alert the team, or maybe even trigger a webhook that triggers GitHub Actions to do something. You can integrate all of this, and it just kind of does things.
Nice. Yeah. So the webhook then points to your IoT lights behind you, and your lights go from one color to a different color, and they kind of change when you,
Right. You can hook this up however you want, which is just kind of cool. It gives you a bunch of ways to customize this, and it does some nice ways to do alerting, and it can make that a little bit quicker to set up, because sometimes setting up alerts can take a lot of time and engineering effort to actually get that infrastructure in place. This eliminates that. Or starts to. So it makes that a little bit nicer. And also, I think if you go back to your dashboard, you should see a line on your dashboard now. Somewhere. Nope. Maybe just if we're below that. I don't know. Not entirely sure. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Just need to click refresh.
And that's just going to show you the status of alerts for this.
So if we stay at this level, at that point there, we're going to hit an alert.
Yeah. Well, I think it hits pending at that point. But you can also add other things like bar charts, pie charts, or whatever, or just resize it. You can also just add text readouts that give you different text. So
cool.
One final. We are a little bit over time, but one quick thing, just because I like to do this because it makes it a little bit nicer for me, is if you click that plus again, and do an add panel. Nope. Sorry, and the top there, you're at add panel. Let's just add another panel. And now, instead of doing a time series, can we change that in the top right there, where it says time series? Click that, and now you can change different things. Let's select stat. So we have no data. If you run this query now, it's going to display a bunch of things, and I think it will automatically pick the last one. You might need to slightly change the query to grab the last thing, but I think it should just do it automatically. But what this would do is give you a scale that says, here's the last value we know. Here's what it currently is sitting at. So you know what current things are, and it will give you a little bit of extra information. So you don't have to quite look at your chart and try to mouse over the very end thing to get that to work.
Argument name is empty. Doesn't like that if I do it. Okay.
Okay. Maybe we come back to, there we go.
There we go.
Perfect. It seems like we just need to change the format to get that to work. But this will give you the current value of this. We have it set to be the last in the calculation on the right-hand side there. So it's going to take whatever the last value is. You can also do the sum of the data set in that time period. So I think you're using like the last 15 minutes. You can have it say, over that 15-minute period, the average of all of these weights was 496. So that can be a kind of a nice way to be like visually see, here's current stats for this. So
cool. So if I save that,
just click apply, and then you can even put it side by side, I think.
There we go.
There you go.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, we are at time. Thank you everybody who joined us for this. We started off with it don't work. We've got problems with Azure Active Directory. Turned out it was our query. We raised issues for that. It was pretty good. We raised a docs issue, and we raised an issue in Custo about that error, so we didn't get it again. And then we've got everything working. We've got it all set up. We've got our dashboard.
Yeah. So this is, I guess, sort of getting us to the point where it works. We have everything in place to make this all work. There might be a few tinkering things to make it work better. But that's what tomorrow is for. Or not tomorrow, that's what next week is for.
Yeah,
as we are finishing everything and getting ready to actually ship everything.
Christopher Smith says, thanks for this, guys. Yep, you are most welcome. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was useful. We have put a link to our survey in the chat. Please do take a moment to fill out the survey, because that actually tells us whether we're doing a good job or not. And, we want to make sure that the content we provide for you is the right content. And you want to make sure that we're giving you what you want and what you need. And we don't know if you don't tell us. So please tell us. Give us your comments. Give us your feedback.
Thank you. Happy Pi Day.
Yeah, happy Pi Day, everybody.
Until next time.
See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.